Hello, my name is Dr. Luke Bell. I'm lecturer in molecular horticulture at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. This is a screencast of material originally made available for the module Principles of Horticulture and Crop Production from the years 2020 to 2025. Please note that some of the details may now be outdated.
So during this first screencast, you should, by the end, be able to describe some of the benefits of cultivating field crops from seeds, explain how the quality of seed can be guaranteed to growers, understand some of the advantages and disadvantages of using hybrid seed, which I'll explain about, and describe some of the factors a farmer might need to consider before drilling seed into a field. So the benefits of using seeds to propagate crops might seem obvious, but there may be a few aspects to it which you're not aware of. So for many annual field crops, it is the only economically viable means of cultivating certain plants. Some species are capable of producing very large volumes of seeds on a very small, relatively small area of land. So this makes it economically viable and beneficial to produce seeds for certain plants which are capable of doing this. Seeds can also be stored quite easily and safely without deterioration. We heard in one of the previous screencasts about the storage conditions for seeds, and generally, as long as seeds are kept cool and free of moisture, they can stay stored for several years. Propagation from seed also avoids the transmission of viruses and diseases and infections from one generation of a crop to another. So that's another big advantage, and as we'll discuss in the next screencast of this series, that can be a big problem for plants and crops which have to be propagated vegetatively. Seed quality is also guaranteed and protected by law in the UK and EU. So as I'll mention in the next few slides, there are laws and protections which give the grower confidence that they when they're buying seed from a grower, it's going to germinate and it's going to be pure to certain levels. So as part of that process, when a new plant variety or crop variety is bred, there's something called the national list. So in the UK, the national list encompasses pretty much all of the major crop species, and in order for a cultivar to be sold commercially, it has to complete a national listing process. So the cultivar must complete 2 years of field trial evaluations, and this is usually in comparison with other cultivars or varieties which are currently on the market, and it must pass what's called a DUS test, so distinctness, uniformity and stability test, so DUS. And this ensures that the cultivar isn't just a copy of a different variety. It has to be distinct and easily identifiable from other cultivars in some way. The crop has to be uniform, so it has to give uniform, for example, in broccoli it would have to give uniform shaped florets or uniform shaped leaves in the case of salad crops, and that must be consistent between growing years, and that's where the stability aspect comes into it as well. All of the traits on which the cultivar is being sold or marketed have to be stable across multiple years and multiple growing seasons. This establishes if the variety is of good breeding quality and ensures that other varieties are not inappropriately duplicated in any way. There's a second stage of this process called the crop stage. I won't go over that because that only really applies to cereal crops and agricultural crops. But the seed stage, the third and final stage, this is where seed certification has to be done, and that basically ensures that the seed that's being sold is of a certain purity and quality. So here, this is a list of the major crops grown in the UK, and all of these are nationally listed. So any breeding company wanting to sell a new cultivar in the UK, seed variety, has to be on the list under each of these different species. And here's just a few other crops which are also on the national list. So in terms of seed certification, for most crops there's a minimum germination and purity level which has to be achieved, and so this slide just shows those different and varying purity and germination legal requirements that breeders and seed merchants have to guarantee. You'll notice there is one exception at the top there. So parsnip is unusual in that it has no national listing requirement. So legally it can be sold at any purity and any germination percentage, but obviously that wouldn't be very good for a company selling parsnip seeds. So as a general rule, even if the crop isn't on the national list or has no legal requirement to be listed, the standards for that species will be similar to a related species. So in this case, parsnip is closely related to carrot. So a grower could expect to achieve 95% purity on a parsnip crop and around about or over 65% germination of seed. Hybrid seed is pretty common for a lot of horticultural crops these days, so things like brassicas and some fruit species as well. You may have also heard hybrid seed referred to as F1 seed or F1 hybrids. So these are essentially varieties that have been bred and are a cross between two different parent cultivars, which results in a offspring which is of reproducible quality and gives reproducible traits. This results in the progeny of that cross having improved yield and quality traits. So that's one of the main advantages of hybrid seed, is that it has this property known as hybrid vigor, or to give it its technical name, its scientific name, heterosis. So this process isn't really fully understood on a genetic level, but it's thought to stem from the fact that when you cross two uniform and distantly related lines of a certain crop, you cross those together, and the mixing of the genes and the mixing of the genome causes an overexpression of certain genes within there, and that then results in the larger size of the progeny, which is generally superior to either of the parents of which it came from. So hybrid seed generally germinates and grows much faster. That's where the vigor aspect comes from, the name hybrid vigor. It gets off to a much quicker start in the field than what would be traditionally called open pollinated seed. So yields are usually much higher, plants much more uniform. And through use of crossing and producing F1 hybrids, hybrids can often have multiple disease resistances. There are disadvantages of using hybrid seed, however. Because they are hybrids and are the result of a cross between two different lines, two different breeding lines, this cross cannot be reproduced by the grower or the farmer himself or herself. And this therefore prevents the farmer from producing their own seed stocks to use the next year. F1 hybrids is a kind of insurance policy, I guess, and a lot of different varieties and species are either male or female sterile, so that mechanism of sterility in either the male or female parts of the plant prevents that saved seed productions for farmers. And generally, because of the more beneficial and advanced traits found in F1 hybrids, they're sold at a premium, so they're much more expensive to buy for farmers than traditional open pollinated cultivars. And this policy and this practice by seed companies has often been blamed for the fact that there's a lack of genetic diversity within horticultural crop species. Whether that's actually quantitatively true or not is still kind of up for debate, but it certainly has lowered the number of different cultivars which are open pollinated on the market. So it does prevent growers from, producing their own seed, and potentially, traditionally, some farmers would have even had their own breeding programs to produce their own seed, but that just isn't the case anymore. So farmers generally now buy seed wholesale by the ton. So they're buying millions and millions of seeds of any given species at a time. The seed industry is very economically important and underpins the supply chain for many crop species in the UK. And a bad seed production can result in shortages for certain crops. And so one of the ways in which seed companies get around this and ensure that doesn't happen is that they do their seed productions in multiple locations. So, for example, they'll have a seed production in the northern hemisphere, and they'll also have one in the southern hemisphere, just to ensure that there's no, if one is lost, then they've still got a backup and can still supply the market with seed. So once the farmer has their seed, it then obviously needs to be drilled into the field. And there are a lot of different factors that will dictate exactly how much seed will be drilled into a certain area of land. So the sowing density of a crop will obviously vary according to what the crop actually is and its actual species, but it will also be determined by the final product size. So a good example of this that we'll discuss in the spring semester when we're looking at individual crops in more detail is carrots. So carrots are sown at varying densities according to how big the final root is going to be. So Chantenay carrots, for example, are sown at around 4 million seeds per acre, whereas Imperator types and non-types are probably only sown at around about 500,000 seeds per acre, and that's because the Chantenay types are much smaller, so they don't have to be grown for quite so long, so the farmer can fit more carrots into one space of land. Other considerations for the farmer when drilling are those statistics about the estimated germination percentage. So additional seed will be sown into the field based on how much is actually expected to germinate if it's direct drilled. And the soil conditions may also dictate the amount of seed which is used. So if it's quite a high quality loamy soil, probably fewer additional seeds will be drilled per acre of land, whereas if it's a quite poor quality sandy soil, more seeds will probably be drilled per unit area. So just to summarise, there are numerous benefits to cultivating from seed. The quality of seed is guaranteed by law, and seed producers must have their products certified by national listing. Hybrid seeds have many superior qualities compared to the traditional open pollinated cultivars, but some argue that the hybrid seed reduces crop diversity and prevents farmers from producing their own seed stocks. Seed drilling is obviously species specific, with many different considerations affecting the spacing and density of any given crop.